Face. Hi, everybody, and welcome. I want to welcome everybody to part 2 of our webinar series of how to survive the peak season. And we have with us today, Austin Rose. He is the Director Go-to-Market for Flxpoint. We have Krish Iyer, and Krish is the Head of Industry Relations and Strategic Partnerships for ShipStation, as well as Dustin Bensing, who is our Senior Client Success Manager for SkuVault. Dustin, I forgot who you worked for. So we're going to touch on a few topics on processing orders and getting them out of your warehouse and what we can do to help you through the peak season, where we know, again, it's going to be a little bit of a difficult season this year. We're going to have a few shortages on labor. We know that there's still difficulty getting things. I heard over the weekend that Costco's limiting some things because they can't get drivers to get their products to their stores. So this is probably some of the interesting things that we're going to run up against this year. So with that, I'm going to get right to it and talk about this. The first thing I really want to talk to everybody about is some good practices for automation, optimization, order management, making sure that the client can get the orders where they need to be. And Austin, I know this is kind of your area of expertise. So please, everybody, I want to keep this conversational. So please chime in. But Austin, if you'd like to get us going on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Kim. Obviously, if you don't know anything about Flxpoint, we are a true dropship automation software for high volume resellers. We are kind of dabbling a little bit more into people using us outside of dropship as well. But really what we come into play is we're kind of sitting there as that central order management hub to help fulfill and optimize your supply chain from your sales channels. So we work with a lot of people that use the likes of a SkuVault for the warehouse management system, as well as a ShipStation, for printing shipping labels and everything else that goes into in-house fulfillment. But then we've got a lot of other people that are utilizing other suppliers to help distribute products from their warehouses and pretty much outsourcing warehouses, whether that's dropship, third-party logistics centers, leveraging other warehouse fulfillment side of things, where we want to make sure that everything's optimized as possible. So really to help answer your question and some of the best practices, and I like to start at the side of where are we sourcing products from? Obviously you have your in-house fulfillment, right? And that's perfect. That's right up ShipStation, SkuVault's alley. You guys hone that in, but maybe you want to start adding some more products. Either you're having backup inventory, or you're also just supplementing your product catalog, where you're going to need to have those distributors, suppliers, brands, whoever. You need to make those relationships with those people to have that ready for peak season. So obviously we hope you've been doing this. We're kind of getting there into September and October. Next thing you know, November is right there around the corner. But having backup suppliers is always great. And if they drop ship, that's even better, because then it's just a quick, easy, send an order to them. They send it to your own customer. You don't see that at all. You kind of sit as that middleman from a technology perspective. So one of the best things to do is always have backups ready, because like we've seen, 2020, it's kind of been a little crazy with shortages. Certain suppliers are operating, certain have to shut down. How much is everything automated versus I have to manually touch a product and ship it out? So have those backups, have the complementary products available as well, but understanding those suppliers and that supply chain to be like, okay, this is a good opportunity of shipping cost is great, customer service is great, pricing is great. Like I'm actually making money. We know in some use cases, dropship, the margins are pretty slim. Not in a lot of use cases though. If you're working directly with a brand that's willing to send a one-off product for you, you're just adding more and more value to not only your product catalog, but now your customer can buy the product that you in-house source, as well as that complementary product. That kind of goes into the next thing of some really good practices for holiday selling is kitting and bundling, right? I know whenever I want to go buy, when I went and bought one of my mirrorless cameras, I wanted to have the kit lens with it, as well as, a strap to hold onto my wrist, as well as a backpack to be able to hold all my camera accessories. Sometimes having that bundled product together is nice, especially from a gift perspective, let's say for Christmas or the holidays. That's one thing that I like to keep in mind, is making sure that supply chain is sitting there ready to go, good backup, maybe adding supplement products and making sure all of that's working the right way. And now you're also adding in this concept of, we call it distributed fulfillment, but you're also just adding more inventory levels to being able to just sell and not have out of stock products. At the end of the day, you might get some crazy bump, let's say halfway through November, and then you have no stock, right? You're in your warehouse, you're looking, you have no stock. Well, being able to adopt a, software, maybe like us or somebody out there where you can add in inventory levels from dropship suppliers or from 3PLs, and then being able to add that into your own in-house products. And then you're never going to go out of stock during the holidays. That's probably the scariest thing for a lot of people out there that are selling online, is being out of stock before Black Friday, before Cyber Monday, like all this other stuff. So the fulfillment side and having stock, having backups, having suppliers, and everything integrated into one area is always the best approach. Another thing kind of on that front, from like a best practice of optimizing your order management, is understanding every single edge case that you run into. We work with so many different retailers and brands, whether they're selling their own branded products or a bit of both, where they are not necessarily ready for every edge case. If we've got some firearm dealers where they can't send, specific ammunition to California, right? That's a big thing from a fulfillment perspective. How are you going to handle that edge case? You might start getting orders in from the UK. Maybe you can handle international shipping, but what about Puerto Rico, right? Puerto Rico is still technically a part of America, but there's so much more in regards to shipping to Puerto Rico versus me just going to the West Coast. And then the last thing there is understanding where your fulfillment centers are too, right? Whether it's a distributor or whether it's your own warehouse, why are you only sending this one product from the East Coast to a customer all the way in the West Coast? So understanding all those specific edge cases is always the best start, in my opinion. It's a great approach to just, let's jot it all down. Let's get a diagram down. Let's make sure that's all good to go. And then implementing a system to help automate that is the next step. The next step is automating all those use cases. And that's the hard part, but that's the best part, because then that goes back to, this overall topic of not adding labor, you're adding automation, you're adding, robots, computers to do all this for you. Set up these automation rules first. So that's like that next step. Let's get that back up, and then let's go right into the automation and automating all these edge cases.
And you touched right on it. I mean, the labor and the out of stocks, I mean, the drop shipping and being able to touch on that and be able to have that, not just in time inventory, but being able to get that inventory out the door from your supplier immediately and have a wholesaler or a manufacturer, whoever's doing the drop shipping for you, and to be able to route those orders very simply and very easily.
And it's almost, and I think one thing too is like, people take for granted the planning aspect. Let's just sit down and let's plan and get ready for understanding my fulfillment. Because once you have that, then you're ready to start that next step of integration and automation, right? I mean, you could still have integrations with, all your Shopify sites and BigCommerce stores and Amazon accounts and things like that. And you might have these EDI integrations with these small brands that you're working with, or these big distributors that have APIs. Doesn't necessarily mean it's automating the process too. So it's kind of that stepping stone of outline it. Let's get things integrated. Let's start the automation process. And obviously we hope you have a system in place that helps for all of these different edge cases too. And honestly, a last step too, that I want to make sure to reiterate on this is stress tests. Like, test everything as much as you can before November or October. Just buy a one-off product. Like, who cares that you just lost $5 on buying a product that you probably didn't need? It's worth it, because next thing you know, something might go down and you got to be prepared for that. So when you're integrating these softwares, you have a central order management system, you got all these sales channels, you got all of these fulfillment options. Stress test, like test it. Maybe don't hire labor, maybe ask, an assistant to help out with it. But that's one thing that we love to reiterate, that you need a QA process. You need to test it. Let's make sure everything's good to go. You'd hate to be reactional. Let's be actional at this time.
Agree. Chris, did you have anything to add to that? And thank you for joining us today. Chris is from ShipStation.
All right. First off, I mean, I think everything well said and, very apropos. I really hate being the one that follows Austin up, because he was so thorough of so many great thoughts here. One thing that I would say, just as a piggyback on the planning of suppliers, this is a global phenomenon. And we saw things like the Suez Canal and the mess that occurred there, and people, that occurred early in the year, but that's having a ripple effect of repercussions now. And we're almost, here at the end of the year. So what that really means is when you are talking about suppliers, backup suppliers, and folks that you rely on, you really have to make this a global endeavor and have people around the globe and look at different channels. A lot of times with suppliers, it's very much by word of mouth or long-term relationships that have been in place. And that's good. That's fine. Again, to Austin's point, at the end of the day, this whole business is about people and relationships. What I would say is certainly there are other channels to find, folks that you can source from, sourcing marketplaces, online forums, things like that. So trying to build those relationships now in anticipation of when a potential problem could happen or will happen, I think is very wise. And it's okay to lead with that, to say, look, because of issues like Suez Canal or whatever it may be, we'd like to talk to you, to have you as a backup. That's okay to have that conversation in this way. So I would definitely echo some of the things that Austin said there about supplier management, supplier sourcing, and the timing of those conversations. That's one. One of the things that I think I would also maybe go a little bit further about talking about distributed inventory and channels is the idea that inventory visibility, you can never have too much inventory visibility. And that's not only your relationship with your 3PL, that's not only the relationship with your dropship provider, that's not only the relationship with your own internal warehouses, but that's also the relationship with your customer and the visibility that you have on the final leg of that journey of the package making it to the consumer and what their after sales support and satisfaction has been. The visibility really needs to be in the shopping cart or well before the shopping cart to communicate what that is. And after the fact, it was funny. I was, of course, ordering online. Any retailer is probably at a hopeless disadvantage because I'm going to analyze and look at everything that they're doing on shipping and logistics. So I actually feel bad for the retailer in this case. But what I would say is I ordered from a retailer recently, and I happened to notice that it was somewhat of a dead link. Meaning, okay, I clicked on it. It took me to a tracking page, and it gave me no information. It was just order as and shipped, but it gave me no information at all. So being the nerd that I am in this space, I actually contacted the retailer because I was actually kind of interested, like, why would they have such a poor visibility on, and they said, well, this is handled by a vendor or a dropship vendor. We have no control over the visibility. I'm like, oh, no. That's a terrible thing to tell your consumer, that you have no visibility. I mean, those words were very much like, watching The Godfather and you're dead to me, because it really was a matter that you cannot use those words. Oh, I don't have visibility. That's unacceptable and not a good excuse. And it took a few days, actually, and then they finally dispatched the package, and I could see the tracking events. But the fact that it took a few days is such an incredibly poor customer experience, because your customer wants to know. So that's why I'm saying it's the visibility for yourself to give to the customer before the cart, in the cart, after the cart, with your suppliers, with your dropship vendors and others within your supply chain. So I really cannot stress enough that inventory visibility is important for so many sides of your business, and you can never really have enough visibility.
And I would piggyback off of that as well and say, if you're selling to other businesses too. And we've got people, it's like either their own manufactured products that's just a part of the ecosystem of all the other millions of things you're doing online, and like being ready for that, because those businesses are going to have problems as well. Or hopefully we don't, right? But that's the last part on that.
Well, and then, I think too, touching on that and then looking at the order management and getting that to the right place and the automation of it. I mean, the drop shipping, of course, you've got it, but let's automate that order to them. I don't think people realize how much goes into that. And what you need. Dustin, you've been sitting there very quiet. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that? And then we'll go on to the next topic real quick.
I did not. I think that they did an excellent job of describing exactly what all is necessary on their end. So no, I think they did an excellent job. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Thank you. And I just want to make sure, as somebody who has been in a business, e-commerce business, where we have used just-in-time inventory, dropship inventory, in-house inventory, FBA inventory, and 3PL inventory, I had 5 different inventory views. I can tell you the importance of using a drop shipping inventory that allows you to automate that process, because at the time that I did this many years ago, that technology did not exist. And we had to create every PO by hand and send it off. And it was horribly time consuming and labor intensive. So yeah, I get
it. Yeah, automation's that next step. And it's worlds different.
Yeah, and it's so important. Everything that we're doing. So I want to move on to the next topic that we're talking about, and that is when we're talking about pick lists. And I know Dustin and Krish, we've both got inventory systems that have pick lists built into them. But when we're talking about pick lists, what tips do you all have to create a good flow through the warehouse that moves at a higher speed without adding more people? Because we know there's a labor shortage this year. We know that nobody can get help. Like I said earlier, Costco's even saying we can't get people to drive trucks across the country. Restaurants are closing because they can't get people to work. So I mean, I think every area of the country has labor shortages. Our Amazon warehouse here is, I mean, they're just about standing on the street corner begging people to come in. So what suggestions and tips and tricks do you have for creating that pick list and moving the people through the warehouse? And can you talk a little bit about scanning products versus eyeballing it?
Yeah, I can. I wouldn't mind going first on this one. So there's a lot of opportunity, or a lot of options within SkuVault. One of the, especially since when you have the clients' marketplaces that are able to feed into SkuVault directly, or they can feed through ShipStation and then to SkuVault. So depending on each client's use case, there's plenty of options. The thing that I suggest early on is that the clients, for everyone, needs to reach out to their contacts at SkuVault, ideally their client success manager. We have a number of new ones on board now, where they can help to identify a potential improvement in your process. They can walk through any concerns that you may have. Maybe if you are looking to increase your workflow, or maybe you're anticipating the peak season coming up and then they're going to increase by, I don't know, X amount of percent. There's certain things that we can do potentially within your process to make it a little bit easier. We always know that the two sides of this is efficiency or accuracy. We try to do what we can to make sure that we mitigate both of them and try to take the client's concerns into mind. So without the potential addition of new users or new employees, there's things that you can do by automating the actual, you can generate pick lists, you can have it automated and printed out at a certain random time or at given times that you choose throughout the day. We have schedulers for that. And there's a feature within SkuVault where you can actually have quantity adjusted automatically based off of the completion of sales, so that if they anticipate that the peak season is just going to be more than what their staff can actually handle at that moment, they can actually set up ahead of time. But you'll want to make sure that you call, get an appointment, speak with a representative of SkuVault to identify how that process will work and make sure that you have enough time to implement it, because you may be set up for success right now, but as your sales increase 20, 30, 50% or more, given that really condensed amount of time around November and December, it's ideal that you have a plan moving forward with that. So And again, I'll have to say is that please reach out to the team members at SkuVault, and then we'll help to identify what the best options are for you. Because, like I said, every use case are slightly different on what they're what we're able to do for you. So.
Great help. Chris, do you have anything to add to that? Because we know ShipStation also has a pick list within there. I've personally used it. I have also used SkuVault, so I've used both of them. So.
Sure. Well, just being candid, a pick list is only as good as the information that's on it. And so, you want to make sure it's not garbage in, garbage out. I think really important to that is the idea of where are you placing your products in the warehouse, and what are the channels that are meant to be there as distribution. So what do I mean by that? So if your client is somebody that sells on multiple marketplaces, well, how does the pick list and the arrangement of that reflect that? Are they selling on Amazon, Walmart, eBay, Etsy, et cetera, and does a pick list then and the format that you put it in reflect that? Pick lists are very important for folks that are in the subscription box space. So remember that a pick list, you must format it the right way. You must have your products in the warehouse in the right location, and really even take a hard look at grouping together similar types of customers and sales channels or merchants that have the same types of sales channels. And then the pick list will then be a more natural outgrowth and evolution of that. But just like what we're talking about with inventory planning and supplier planning, it is a people game at the end of the day. So the information on the pick list is only as good as the inputs going in and the people that are going to execute it. One thing about the technology that I do have to point out, we're talking about labor shortages and things like that. Necessity is the mother of invention. So in addition to obviously putting in wonderful things like SkuVault, ShipStation, Flxpoint into your warehouse, that's the sound of subliminal messages flashing on your screen to entice you to do so. Is the idea of, is it the time to invest in things like robotics? So we are hearing a lot, it used to be that you would hear robotics and think of something that's very sci-fi in the future, but now a lot of even mom and pop 3PLs, local fulfillment providers will make use of some light robotics to make use of that, so that things like the pick list can then be used with people that need to do more specialized types of functions. Again, pick list is there again to act as a checksum against the items that are supposed to be in that order. Last thing I'll say on the technology, in addition to the robotics, now is the time to start looking at things like 5G technologies. That used to be something that was so far away, but the idea of communication in the warehouse, whether it's the traditional walkie-talkies that we've seen, headsets, other types of things, it's really now the right time to talk about what is the bandwidth and communication in the warehouse, because those tiny points of communication between devices and between people then become really important in the idea of how are you communicating? And those tiny gaps in communication can then have a really big impact on the smoothness and accuracy of the fulfillment of orders in the warehouse. So while the pick list is obviously very important, it is very people dependent. So there are a lot of different things and technologies to take a look at to make your operations smoother.
And
Agree. Go ahead, Dustin.
I had something I was wanting to kind of piggyback on with Krish, is that it's very important to make sure that if you feel like your warehouse is not set up for success, that you start looking into performing your cycle counts and your audits as soon as possible, so that they're not wasting time running around at the time that the orders are needing to be fulfilled, to actually try to identify and locate the pertinent items, as well as are the items that are are they properly laid out? So dealing with dead inventory or inventory that's need to be put in an ideal spot, hopefully ideally next to the shipping area or the area that's closest to where they're needing to be packaged up and be shipped out. Because if they're having to run the full length of their warehouse multiple times for items that are sold quite frequently, then it's a waste of that person's time, and it's going to end up being costly for that that business. So just something just to add into it.
No, I agree. Austin, did you have anything you wanted to add to
Well,
that?
there's a couple things that, we've had some really good conversations with some other partners that are, we're hearing more and more of the rumblings of robotics getting introduced to the warehouse, and when is the time to start thinking about that? When's the time to start actually implementing it? I mean, obviously it depends on the type of capital you have for different companies. That's really interesting to think about, because we're also hearing this conversation around, leaving a carbon footprint in the world based off of your shipping. And, does that go into play there, right? We get these companies that are very eco-friendly or earth moving forward of trying to mitigate the carbon footprint. So like, it's just something to kind of think about. I just keep hearing more and more of this rumbling. I didn't hear it years ago. Now I hear it just more and more. And it's very interesting in the, global pandemic world of, we don't want humans to be touching our products that are getting shipped to us, right? That was one thing. And the second thing that I kind of want to reiterate on Dustin's point is, just in the world of SaaS, there are so many little nuanced settings or processes or best practices that so much of our either users or customers or leads just don't know about, because it's kind of like insider information from our support teams to our sales teams to our dev teams. So always asking, what's the best practice should be prepared for the crazy, November that we're expected to have, just goes miles. I can't tell you the amount of, quick wins we get with our team here on, I didn't know you guys did this. It's so finite, but it made worlds difference knowing that was a better practice than what we're currently doing now.
Yep.
So I would highlight that every day of just asking your success manager, asking the support team of, what's the best practice for this going forward, rather than thinking, the best practice. Ask the experts. Yeah.
Pick up the phone, call these people. They're experts. Call the teams within the companies.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Krish.
One point that I would like to make to that, absolutely, calling the experts is extremely important. But if you're a merchant that right now does self-fulfillment, maybe you've thought of 3PL fulfillment, and it may be, that your volume or situation doesn't lend itself to it right now, it is perfectly okay to contact a fulfillment provider to ask them for best practices, like, what's your technology stack, so that therefore I'm aligned for in the future when I could potentially be working with you. That's perfectly appropriate. And frankly, the 3PL will appreciate that question. It is also very apropos, very appropriate to ask a 3PL, even for somebody like a vendor or supplier list, if they're willing to provide it. So let's say, to the previous point that Austin and I both had about supplier management and sourcing and having diversity, many times the 3PL themselves will have a very good list if they're working with other merchants in that vertical or category or type. So I can't stress enough that even if you're not going to be using a 3PL today, they're an excellent resource to pick their brains, ask questions, to prepare yourself for the future.
No, I agree. And I think, we hear this a lot. I work with the sales team quite a bit, and we hear a lot where people are planning. Maybe they're not going to buy SkuVault today. Maybe they're not going to buy some software today, but they want to make sure that they're getting the right software in place. So when they're ready for it, they have the right things in place, and they're not going somewhere that's so out in left field that they're never going to fit in anywhere. So yeah, it's great. I want to move on real quick and talk about the shipping process, because obviously we got to get it out the door. We've gotten the orders, we've gotten them in, we're processing them through the warehouses and over to our drop shippers, but we got to get it out the door. And, we obviously, we don't do shipping. ShipStation does do shipping. So Christian, I'm going to kind of send this one off to you first. But, what are some of the vital important tips that you have? And what about the scanning process of making sure that you're getting the right product to the right person and the right label on the right box? And if you're doing batch printing, which we know a lot of people do, we see orders go to the wrong person. And so what are some of the best practices around that?
Sure. I think it goes to some of the previous points that I raised, that Austin raised, Dustin raised as well. Where is your product in the warehouse? Is it in an optimal place? Is it in an optimal place for you to label it properly? And we talked about the pick list, but also from a labeling standpoint. Do you have the business rules set up in advance for the software to make sure that it runs properly in your warehouse? Getting those business rules well in advance, talking about what the use cases are, really important to trying to get a sense of what you're going to face in a few weeks. So getting those business rules now, being able to then in a few weeks, then see how it works and stress test it now, super, 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 super important. Same thing with the printing of the label itself. Nobody wants to have an awkward looking label later. So you got to test it with the specific merchant type if you're a 3PL or if you're self-fulfilling, what that looks like from a standpoint of the label, any sort of branded packing slips, the pick list that we mentioned earlier. So I would say that those things are really important. Where it's placed in the warehouse, what the business rules are, and stress testing in advance. Those would be the three things that I'd say are super important here.
Austin, Dustin, do you have anything to add to that?
I would say one thing about the shipping process, not necessarily the accuracy, but more of like from a time management perspective, where whenever you are submitting orders, whether it be to a ShipStation, to a SkuVault, to a third party, understanding what's the most optimal time to place that order. I can't tell you how many brands and distributors that people work with us, that use our system, that you can only submit an order to them within the time span of like 5 hours. It's like you can't just send it to them at 4 o'clock in the morning because someone on the other side of the country or the other side of the world, placed it and everything's just automated. It's like you have to send them in a specific time frame to get it out that day or the next day or to be more timely. So having a scheduler, kind of like a lot of us softwares, Dustin, you hinted on a scheduler of when to submit that purchase order. And then from another perspective of time management is the shipment tracking. When you're working with other third parties, people provide shipment trackings in all sorts of different ways. They say, oh, just go log into UPS. That's where you're going to find it. Oh, no, we provide it in a body of an email that's sent to whatever we have on file. It's like, how do you automate that? So understanding those specifically and understanding where you can automate and where, honestly, you're just going to have to add labor to it because it has to involve a human to copy and paste. Because at the end of the day, how many of us have ordered something and we have not gotten a tracking number within days? And it's not just because it hasn't been shipped out. It's just they weren't able to get us a tracking number, within a timely manner. I can't tell you how many times I've almost canceled orders just because I've never gotten a tracking number in a timely perspective. So maybe not necessarily on the accurate process, but on the time management perspective from shipping, those are two really important things to think about.
That's probably one of the most important things that was just said, is get those tracking numbers out, because we're all shaking our heads going, yes, we've probably all almost canceled orders or have canceled orders because we didn't get a tracking number. And now we're afraid we're going to lose our money or we're not going to get it in time or whatever the case may be. Anyone else? Dustin, did you have anything to add?
Yes. I know from the warehouse and inventory management aspect of it, I always try to ensure that if a client or someone that's holding inventory is able to actually barcode the inventory or have proper information inside their catalog, so that one, that the information that the barcodes is for the right item, as well as if they could include an image URL on an item. So during the SkuVault quality control process, if you scan the item, it would provide you a thumbnail or a picture that you can actually use as a visual as well, because some people that may have a very large variety of different items that they sell, that having that visual for that person that may not be as aware with their own product line is extremely helpful. And having that as close to the shipping step, so right after you've already collected the items and you're in the right before you get to the packing area, if you're doing that quality control measure so that you verify you have the right item, because right then you should be printing out your shipping label ideally, and then adhering it to that box so that you don't possibly get the wrong label on the wrong box, which is not always ideal for some clients or some people, but that's one way to potentially avoid any mislabeling of the boxes.
Anyone have anything else? Are we good? Trish? Well, I think we've got our topics covered. I thank you all so much. I would like to give you all 30 seconds or so to let everybody know how to get in touch with your companies and what else they need to know about your various companies. Austin, would you like to start?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you head over to flexpoint.com, there's no E in it. It is FLXPOINT. We don't believe in vowels in the SaaS world. It's flexpoint.com, FLXPOINT.com. If you head over to the website, we've got a lot of good information about our company. Hey, talk to an expert. That's our best way of getting in contact with us. The one thing we pride ourselves is we give a full tailored demo to our customers. And we actually not only demo the app itself, but we actually diagram out what your current tech stack is to see where we fit. We're not salesmen, we're solutions consultants. We're able to, dissect what you have. And if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. We're okay with that. So we want to make sure that we have everything in place perfectly for you. So go ahead, talk to an expert. If you're in the need of any type of order management system from a more of a modern day perspective, we like to pride ourselves on we built from a dropship first perspective, because that is the most complicated and complex type of ordering in regards to let's add on traditional retail with it as well. So we like to say that we're more of a modern day order management system, someone that's incorporated third-party fulfillment. Give us a check at flexpoint.com. Thanks, Kim, for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Krish.
Well, first off, as you know, I was on Jeopardy many years ago, but if I am ever on Wheel of Fortune, I pray to God that, that the puzzle to solve isn't Flexpoint, since that vowel is thing. But what I would say is ShipStation. We are the platform where we say our mantra is wherever you sell, however you ship. The idea that if you're a merchant that sells direct channel, we can support you. If you're just starting out and starting to sell on marketplaces, we can support you. But I think more importantly, we can help you grow. And the idea is for the merchant who's just starting out, all the way up to ones that are professional sellers that do hundreds of thousands of shipments a day, we have a solution for you, and we've built our product to be able to scale with you. So that's what I would definitely say to that. What I'd also say is our solutions here together can pair very nicely, and they play nicely in the sandbox with each other, quite literally, when we're talking about a tech environment, sandbox. See what I did there? So what I would say is check out all of our solutions. They do work well together, and we are all here to help you.
Agree. We're all together. We make a great solution with order management, warehouse management, and shipment management. And Dustin, I'm going to let you finish up and tell us how to get in touch with SkuVault, because I don't know.
To get in touch with SkuVault, you can just easily go to support@skuvault.com, or just type in SkuVault at skuvault.com. And if you want to just call us, you can reach us at 502-795-5491, and someone with sales or your CSM or someone in support will be able to assist you.
Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. It was a great conversation today, and I look forward to everybody having a wonderful peak season. Everyone, please be sure to reach out to Flexpoint, to ShipStation, and to SkuVault, and get a great tech stack going and get through peak and have an awesome season. Thank you, everyone.